Now we'll be starting with a very important head of income, that is capital gains. Section 45 to Section 55A. They contain the provisions relating to capital gains. Section 45 to Section 55A, they are containing the provisions relating to capital gains. Now fundamentally, when any gains will be chargeable to tax under the head, this particular head, capital gains, when there is a capital asset and there is a transfer of the capital asset, then the profits and gains will be what chargeable to tax under this head. Capital asset is Section 214 and transfer is Section 247. So fundamentally, the capital gains will be, gains will be taxable under this head when the following conditions as listed in Section 45(1) are satisfied. That there must be a capital asset. For any sum to be taxable under the head capital gains, there must be a capital asset. The capital asset must have been transferred, and such transfer must take place during the previous year, and transfer will give rise to profits and gains, and here profits and gains also includes loss. And the same must not be exempt by virtue of sections 54, 54B, 54D, EC, EE, F, G, GA, GB and 54H. So therefore, when these conditions basically are satisfied, so fundamentally there must be, first of all, there must be a capital asset, and capital asset must have been transferred. Then taxability arises under the head capital gains if the transfer is not exempt by virtue of these particular sections. Now, what is a capital asset? Section 2, clause 14 defines the term capital asset, and here capital asset basically means property of any kind. Capital asset means property of any kind held by an assessee, whether or not connected with his business or profession. So all properties, all sorts of rights, etc., they are covered under the ambit of what? Capital gains. So capital asset basically, capital asset means property of any kind held by an assessee. It may be connected with the business or it may not be connected with the business. So we have seen when depreciable assets are transferred, it gives rise to what? Capital gains. So these are connected with the business. So property of any kind held by an assessee, whether or not connected with the business or profession. Besides this, if any securities are held by foreign institutional investors, so basically they are investors. Therefore, securities which are held by these foreign institutional investors and they have invested the same in accordance with the regulations which have been framed by SEBI, then those securities, it will be regarded as what? Capital asset for them, these foreign institutional investors. Now, what have been excluded from the ambit of capital asset, that is to be remembered, that is stock in trade, consumable stores and raw materials held for the purpose of business and profession. So stock in trade, consumable stores and raw materials held for the purpose of business and profession, that has been excluded. Here it will be basically when you transfer these stock in trade, consumable stores and raw materials, it will give rise to what? Profits and gains of business and profession. Then personal effects. What is excluded under from the ambit of capital asset is personal effects. What is personal effect? That is to say movable property. Movable property of any kind held by the assessee for his personal use or personal use of any member of family. Movable property including wearing apparel and furniture. Including wearing apparel and furniture, but excluding what? Jewelry. Jewelry will not be covered under the ambit of personal effect. Archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, sculptures and any work of art, they won't be covered under the ambit of the personal effect. So in case of any jewelry or say archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, sculptures or any work of art is transferred, investments are made in these. Therefore, if the same are transferred, it will give rise to capital gains because they are what? Capital asset. So they are capital asset, therefore it will give rise to capital gains. Otherwise, the personal effect, say you are having your personal motor car, your personal wearing apparel, your personal furniture, which is at home, then in that particular circumstance, that won't be covered under the ambit of capital asset. Then rural agricultural land is not covered under the ambit of capital asset. Rural agricultural land will not be covered under the ambit of capital asset, though urban agricultural land is a capital asset. Urban agricultural land is a capital asset. Now, if the land is situated in a rural area or the land is situated in the area which is assessed to land revenue or local rates, that will be a rural agricultural land. And in case if the, the population of the municipality or cantonment board exceeds 10,000, then it comes under the ambit of urban area. So if the population exceeds 10,000 as per the last preceding census, but does not exceed 1 lakh, then that is urban area, and whatever agricultural land is there within the 2 kilometers of the limits, local limits, it will be also regarded as an urban agricultural land. Then in case the population exceeds 1 lakh but does not exceed 10 lakhs, then the area which is within 6 kilometers from the local limits of municipality or cantonment board, that will be covered under the ambit of urban area. And in case if the population exceeds 10 lakhs, then within 8 kilometers from the local limits, aerial distance is 8 kilometers from the local limits of municipality or cantonment board whose population exceeds 10 lakhs as per the last preceding census, that will be what regarded as an urban area, urban agricultural land. So urban agricultural land is a capital asset. Otherwise, if it is a rural agricultural land, it is not a capital asset, and capital gains does not arise on transfer of rural agricultural land. Then we have 6.5% gold bonds, 7% gold bonds 1980, national defense gold bonds, and special bearer bonds which were issued in 1991. These are not regarded as capital asset. Then gold deposit bonds which have been issued under gold deposit scheme 1999, or deposit certificates which have been issued under gold monetization scheme 2015. Deposit certificates which have been issued under gold monetization scheme 2015. That is what we have given you our gold, and they have given us deposit certificates under the gold monetization scheme. Those, those deposit certificates, they will not be regarded as capital asset. Those deposit certificates will not be regarded as a capital asset. So fundamentally, what capital asset means? Capital asset means property of any kind, all sorts of rights, all sorts of assets, whether or not they are connected with business or profession of the assessee, they are covered under the ambit of capital asset. Okay. Besides this, securities, even if they are held as stock in trade by foreign institutional investors, it will be regarded as capital asset. But what will not be included in the ambit of capital asset? Stock in trade will not be included. Consumable stores and raw materials held for the purpose of business and profession. Personal effect, that is to say, movable property including wearing apparel and furniture held for personal use by the assessee or any member of his family. However, jewelry, archaeological collections, drawings, painting, sculptures, or any work of art, though they may be personal, but still they will be regarded as capital asset. And in case you transfer those jewelry, archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, sculptures, and any work of art, it will give rise to capital gains. Rural agricultural land is not a capital asset, and you remember that is deposit certificates which are issued under gold monetization scheme 2015, it will not be regarded as capital asset. Those sovereign gold bonds, it is regarded as what? A capital asset. Government issues sovereign gold bonds, that is what? Capital asset. And in case prior to their maturity or redemption, if the same has been transferred, it will give rise to what? Capital gains. Now, capital assets, they have been defined, capital assets in this manner. Now, capital asset can be a long-term capital asset, or it can be a short-term capital asset. It can be a long-term capital asset. Section 229A, it provides for long-term capital asset, and there can be a short-term capital asset. 242A, it gives rise to what? Short-term capital asset. Now, fundamentally, whether it's a long-term capital asset or a short-term capital asset, it depends upon the period of holding. In case in normal circumstances, if period of holding, it exceeds what? 36 months. If period of holding exceeds what? 36 months, then it will be regarded as a long-term capital asset. So here, normal circumstances, if period of holding exceeds what? 36 months, they are regarded as what? The long-term capital asset. But in case of securities, other than unit listed in recognized stock exchange, if it is units of UTI or units of an equity-oriented mutual fund or zero coupon bonds, instead of 36 months, period of holding is taken as 12 months. If period of holding immediately preceding the date of transfer it exceeds 12 months, it will be regarded as what? Long-term capital asset. That is units of UTI, units of equity-oriented fund, zero coupon bonds, and securities which are listed in what? Recognized stock exchange. If the period of holding exceeds 12 months, remember, it will be regarded as long-term capital asset. In case of unlisted shares, and land or building or both, that is immovable property being land or building or both, if the period of holding exceeds 24 months, it will be regarded as long-term capital asset. If the period of holding exceeds 24 months, it will be regarded as long-term capital asset. If period of holding does not exceed 24 months, it will be regarded as what? Short-term capital asset. So this is about what? Long-term and short-term capital asset. And in case if long-term capital asset is transferred, it will give rise to long-term capital gains. If short-term capital asset is transferred, it will give rise to what? Short-term capital gains. And we will see the mode of computation in section 48. There are different modes of computation, because while computing the long-term capital gains, we get the benefit of indexation, whereas while computing the short-term capital gains, we do not get the benefit of indexation. Now we are saying that here the period of holding, it can be 12 months, it can be 24 months, it can be 36 months. Now in computing the period of holding, what you have to include, what you have not to include, you must remember that has been provided in explanation to section 242A. They say that if shares are held in company in liquidation, if shares are held, we are having shares and company has gone in liquidation, then in that particular circumstance, the period subsequent to the date when the company goes into liquidation shall be excluded. Any period subsequent to the date on which the company goes into liquidation shall be excluded. Logically, say I have acquired the shares today and after 6 months that company goes into liquidation. Then my period of holding will be, say, only 6 months. My period of holding will only be 6 months. And what is the cost action? We have also furthermently provided here in certain special cases how you will be computing the cost. So here in this case, there is nothing special here. Whatever amount is paid for acquisition of the shares, that will become the cost of acquisition. So in case if a company goes into liquidation, you have to just remember the period subsequent to the date when the company goes into liquidation, the said period will be what? Excluded. In case if you assets are acquired under section 49(1) modes, such as say gift from relative, or say by will, inheritance, amalgamation, etc., they have been given in section 49(1). So basically that these under section 49(1), most of those transactions are covered which are not regarded as transfer. Therefore, basically the period of holding of the previous owner, is also included, and the cost to the previous owner will become the cost of the asset to the assessee. That is what period of holding for which the asset is held by the previous owner will be included in case if the asset is acquired under section 49(1) modes, and cost to the previous owner plus cost of improvement incurred by the previous owner or the assessee, the same will be what? Regarded as a cost of improvement here. Now we have seen that in case the inventory of a business is converted into capital asset, in case if inventory is converted into capital asset, here you remember that the period of holding will commence from the date of conversion or treatment of the inventory into capital asset, and the fair market value on the date of conversion, which is regarded as full value of consideration for computing the business profits, becomes the cost of acquisition. That is the fair market value which has been taken into account for the purpose of section 28(6)(a) for computing PGBP. For computing PGBP, what is the fair market value? That will be regarded as the cost of acquisition. So if any inventory of business is converted or treated as a capital asset by the assessee, the period from the date of conversion or treatment as capital asset shall be considered, and the fair market value which has been taken into account for the purpose of computing PGBP, the same will be regarded as what? The cost of acquisition when the inventory has been converted into, say, a capital asset. Now, in case if amalgamation takes place and say ABC Limited is amalgamated with XYZ Limited and you are a shareholder of say ABC Limited, now you have to surrender the shares of ABC Limited and you get shares of XYZ Limited. So in that case, you know, the period of holding for which shares in the amalgamating company, it was held by the assessee, the same will be included. So you are owning these shares, say XYZ Limited, which gets amalgamated into ABC Limited. The period of holding of say XYZ Limited will be included while computing the period of holding of ABC Limited, and the cost of shares of the XYZ Limited will be taken as what? The cost of shares of the ABC Limited. That is the cost of shares of the amalgamating company becomes the cost of shares of the amalgamated company. In case of bonus shares or other securities, here the period of holding will commence from the date of allotment, and if the shares have been allotted before 1/4/2001, then the fair market value will become the cost of acquisition, and if the bonus shares have been allotted on or after 1/4/2001, then in that particular circumstance, the cost of action shall be taken as nil, subject to the provisions of section 112A. Then in case of right shares, here right shares, being an existing holder, you are given right shares. So the period of holding will commence from the date of allotment of those right shares, and the cost of acquisition in case of the original shareholder, say the original shareholder, I am the original shareholder, I have to pay certain amount to the company for acquisition of those right shares. So what will be my cost? What is the amount which has been paid to the company? That is the purchase price will be my cost. And in case if the rights have been renounced and I purchase those rights and now I acquire right shares from the company, that in that case, whatever the amount which is paid to the company as well as whatever is the amount which is paid to the person who renounced those rights will be by cost of acquisition. Then we have offer of rights. We have what? Offer of rights. The cost of acquisition of offer of rights will be taken as nil because we don't have to pay anything, because being an existing holder we get offer of rights. Then we can get these shares. If you pay the amount to the company, then it becomes the cost of right shares. And here the period of holding of the offer of rights, the same will be taken from the date when the offer is made by the company. The period of holding will commence from the date when the offer is made by the company. So if I XYZ Limited is a company, I am the existing holder, I have 100 shares. Now company gives 1:1 right offer, and the company has asked for ₹20 per share. So in this case, if I apply for 100 right shares, then I will have to pay ₹20 per share to the company. That will become my cost. I can renounce the rights also. Say out of 100 rights, I renounce 80 rights and receive ₹15 per right. Then my cost action of those offer of rights will be nil. Whatever is ₹15 has been received on renouncement of 80 rights, that will be my capital gains. And the person who has purchased those rights from me, his cost will be the amount which he has paid to the company plus the amount which he has paid to me. This is about the concept of the offer of rights and right shares. Right shares comes into existence from the date of allotment. Then we are having, say, specified security or say sweat equity shares which have been allotted to the employees under employee stock option plan. In that case, what is the period of holding? The period of holding will commence from the date of allotment. Date of allotment or date of transfer of such specified security or sweat equity shares to the employee. That is the period of holding will commence from that date, and the fair market value which has been taken into account while calculating the perquisite, we have seen that will become the cost of acquisition. The fair market value which is taken into account while computing the value of perquisite will become the cost of acquisition. In case if you shares of resulting company are acquired in a scheme of demerger, then in that particular circumstance, the period for which shares in the demerged company are held by the assessee will be included. The period for which shares in the demerged company are held by the assessee will be included. And what will be the cost of acquisition of shares in the resulting company? Cost of acquisition of shares in the resulting company will be what? Whatever is the cost of shares cost of action of shares in demerged company into, say, net book value of assets transferred to resulting company divided by net worth of demerged company before demerger. That will be the cost of acquisition of the shares of the resulting company. And what will be the cost of action of shares of demerged company after demerger? Cost action of the shares minus what? Cost action of shares of the resulting company. That will be what? The cost action of shares of the demerged company after demerger. That is total cost of shares before demerger minus cost of shares of the resulting company which has been acquired under section 49(2)(c). Now, if there are sponsors of business trust and they surrender their shares and they have been allotted units of business trust, so that transaction is not regarded as transfer. Units of business trust which have been allotted pursuant to transfer of shares by the sponsor, that transaction is not regarded as transfer. So when these shares of special purpose vehicles have been transferred, then in that particular circumstance, we get units of business trust, it is not regarded as transfer. So when subsequently the units of business trust are transferred by the sponsors, in that particular circumstance, what will be the period of holding? The period of holding will include kya? The period of holding of shares. It will include the period of holding of shares and the cost of acquisition of the shares will become cost of acquisition of the units of business trust. Cost of acquisition of share will become what? Will become cost of acquisition of units of business trust. Okay, that is real estate investment trust and infrastructure investment trust. In case if any units of mutual fund are acquired under consolidating scheme of the mutual funds, so here in computing the period of holding, the period for which the unit or units in consolidating scheme of mutual funds were held by the SSE, the same will be included, and the cost of action of the unit or units which are acquired in consolidating scheme will be equal to what? The cost of unit or units in the consolidating scheme of the mutual fund. So what is the old unit cost will become the cost of the new units which have been acquired under consolidating scheme. Similarly, there are units of mutual fund acquired under consolidating plan of mutual fund scheme. There is a consolidating plan of mutual fund scheme. So here also the period of holding of the earlier units will be included and the cost of action of the unit or units in the consolidating plan of the mutual fund will become the cost of the new units. So earlier units cost, earlier units period of holding in both the cases will be included because the said transactions are not regarded as transfer. When subsequently the new units are sold, then taxability arises. Then in case if any shares are acquired on redemption of GDRs, if shares are acquired on redemption of GDRs, in that case here the period of holding will start from the date when the redemption request has been made. Period of holding will start from the date when the redemption request of GDRs have been made. So in case capital asset being share of shares which is acquired by a non-resident assessee on redemption of GDRs which have been referred under 115 AC, in that particular circumstance, the period shall be reckoned from the date when such redemption request has been made. Period of holding, the same shall be reckoned from the date when redemption request has been made, and in that case, whatever the price of share or shares prevailing on any recognized stock exchange on the date on which the redemption request has been made, the same will become the cost of acquisition. The price of share or shares prevailing on any recognized stock exchange on the date on which such redemption request has been made, the same will become the cost of acquisition. Then in case if any shares or debentures of a company, they become property of the SSE by way of conversion of bonds or debenture stock or deposit certificates. There can be partly convertible debentures, there can be fully convertible debentures, and in conversion we receive shares or say debenture or say debenture stock. then in that particular circumstance, what will be the period of holding? The period of holding will include for the new asset, that is the new shares, etc. The same will include the period for which these assets were held, that is what these debenture, stock or deposit certificates were held. And the cost of action will be what? Cost of convertible portion. Cost of convertible portion of such debentures. For example, we have purchased 10,000 debentures, 60% convertible portion for 1,20,000 rupees. On conversion, 5,000 shares have been received. 5,000 shares have been received. Then what will be the cost action? It will be 1,20,000 into 60%. That is what? 72,000 will become the cost action of 5,000 shares. And we get the non-convertible debenture portion, and its cost will be what? 40% of 120. Its cost will remain 48,000 rupees. So fundamentally that has been provided. Then in case if a capital asset being rights of partnership, rights of a partner in a limited liability partnership, he has acquired the rights of partner in a limited liability partnership when the unlisted company or private limited company has been converted into limited liability partnership. When the unlisted company and private limited company, the same has been converted into limited liability partnership, and you have become, as a shareholder, you were there, now you have become a partner. Then in what will be the cost of the rights of being a partner there? That is the cost of acquisition of the shares. The cost action of the shares immediately before the conversion will become what? It's your cost of action. Then under 47.4, what happens is, in 47.5, if a holding company transfers a capital asset, holding company transfers a capital asset to 100% subsidiary company, or 100% subsidiary company transfers a capital asset to holding company. Okay, this transaction is not regarded as transfer if the transferee company is an Indian company. However, in case if the relationship of 100% subsidiary company cease to exist within a period of 8 years from the date of transfer, or the transferee company converts the capital asset into stock in trade, in that particular circumstance, the taxability arises by virtue of withdrawal. And here, in that case, the cost of acquisition of the asset will be what? The cost at which the asset has been acquired by the transferee company. The cost action will be the cost at which the assets have been acquired by the transferee company. And the period of holding shall commence from the date of acquisition of the asset by the transferee company. This is the case of withdrawal, when there is a withdrawal of exemption. Otherwise, if it is a 47.4 or 47.5 case, it comes under the ambit of 49.1, and previous owner cost becomes our cost, and period of holding of previous owner is also included. Then in case if there is a transfer of property, the value of which has been subject to tax under 56(2)(10), taxable gifts of movable and immovable property, here the value which has been taken into account for the purpose of computing the taxable gifts under section 56(2)(10), that will be what here? That will be basically the cost of acquisition. So if any gifts we have received from relative, then it comes under the ambit of 49(1) modes. Other than relative, if you receive any goods, gifts, and which are chargeable to tax under 56(2)(10), other than relative, if you are receiving any gift which is chargeable to tax under 56(2)(10), in that particular circumstance, whatever is the fair market value which has been taken into account for computing the income from other sources, the same is taken as a cost of acquisition. Then there was an income declaration scheme, and here you have to declare the income. IDS scheme 2016 was there. So whatever is the fair market value of the asset which has been taken into account for the purpose of the said scheme, fair market value of the asset which has been taken into account for the purpose of said scheme, it will become the cost of acquisition, and period of holding will commence from the date of commencement of the scheme. Period of holding will commence from the date of commencement of the scheme. Then in case if any equity shares are required on conversion of preference shares, the cost action of preference shares will become the cost action to the assessee, and the period of holding of preference shares will be included here. And where the unit or units in a segregated portfolio becomes a property of the assessee on account of segregation, here the period of holding of the original units in the main portfolio will be included, and the cost of acquisition of the units in the total portfolio into what? Net assets value transferred to segregated portfolio divided by what? The net worth of the net assets value of the total portfolio before such segregation will be the cost of acquisition of the units in the segregated portfolio, and cost of action of the original units will be reduced by what? The cost of action. Same in case of demerger. Here this applies in case of segregation of portfolio also. So this is about what in computing the period of holding, you have to include certain period, we have to exclude certain period. So this was about the computational aspects which will be helpful at the time of computation of say capital gains in different say cases. Now we say that there must be a capital asset and capital asset must be transferred. Now we come back again, there must be a capital asset and the capital asset must be transferred. Now what how the term transfer has been defined? Transfer has been defined in section 2 clause 47, that is section 247, in an inclusive manner. Transfer includes a sale, exchange or relinquishment of the asset. It includes what? Sale, exchange or relinquishment of the asset, extinguishment of any rights therein. If there is a sale of asset, exchange of asset, relinquishment of the asset, extinguishment of any rights, if there is a compulsory acquisition under any law, that is also regarded as transfer. Compulsory acquisition under any law. 45(5) provides for the taxation of under compulsory acquisition under any law. Conversion of a capital asset into say stock in trade. If you convert capital asset into stock in trade, it is regarded as transfer. Maturity or redemption of zero coupon bonds. Maturity or redemption of zero coupon bonds is also transfer. Then transfer of immovable property in part performance of a contract referred under section 53A of the Transfer of Property Act, that is also covered, and transactions which are the effect of transferring or enabling the enjoyment of immovable property. Transactions which have the effect of transferring or enabling the enjoyment of immovable property, the said transactions are also what? Regarded as transfer. So this is section 247 that defines the term transfer in an inclusive manner. So there must be capital asset, the capital asset must have been transferred, then certain transactions, they are not regarded as transfer. And normally in these cases, when the transactions are not regarded as transfer, no capital gains will arise when this transaction takes place. But when subsequently the assets which are acquired under these cases, normally they fall under section 49 one more. Therefore, the cost of the to the previous owner becomes the cost of the asset to the assessee. So transactions which are not regarded as transfer, section 47 list out those transactions which are what? Not regarded as transfer. So we can go through this once, because these are also those cases where normally the cost to the previous owner becomes the cost of the asset to the assessee, and period of holding of the previous owner is also included. So number one is what? If there is total or partial partition of Hindu undivided family, transfer of capital asset under total or partial partition of Hindu undivided family, under a gift, will or an irrevocable trust, if capital asset has been transferred by a holding company to 100% subsidiary or 100% subsidiary to holding company, provided transferee company is an Indian company. Then in scheme of amalgamation, if assets have been transferred from amalgamating company to Indian amalgamated company, if shares which are held in an Indian company by amalgamating foreign company, they are transferred to amalgamated foreign company subject to conditions. Then banking company or to banking institution, scheme of amalgamation, if the capital assets have been transferred. Then shares of foreign company by amalgamating foreign company to amalgamated foreign company, if controlling interest has been derived. If controlling interest is derived from shares of Indian company, certain transactions, they are what? Basically not regarded as transfer. Similarly, in scheme of demerger, if any capital asset has been transferred from demerged company to resulting company, if shares of demerged company, we have shares held in an Indian company, they are transferred by a demerged foreign company to resulting foreign company, shares held in Indian company, provided here the 75% of the shareholders of the demerged foreign company becomes what? Shareholders of the resulting foreign company. Similarly, in case if any capital asset has been transferred by, say, predecessor cooperative bank to successor cooperative bank in a scheme of business reorganization, either amalgamation or demerger of cooperative banks is there. Then shares in a predecessor cooperative banks held by a shareholder is transferred in a scheme of business reorganization. Besides this is a shares of foreign company by demerged foreign company to, say, resulting foreign company if the shares controlling interest is derived from shares of Indian company. Condition here is also that 75% of the shareholders of the demerged foreign company becomes the shareholders of the resulting foreign company. Then in case if you are given shares, if a shareholder is given shares of a resulting company, who is a shareholder? Shareholder of demerged company is given shares of resulting company, that transaction will not be regarded as transfer. Similarly, if you surrender the shares of the amalgamating company and you are given shares of the amalgamated company, on that surrender transaction will not be regarded as transfer. As we have seen, if there are bonds or GDRs or rupee denominated bonds of an Indian company, they are transferred by a non-resident to another non-resident outside India. So here bonds or GDRs or rupee denominated bonds of an Indian company are transferred by a non-resident to another non-resident outside India. Then transfer of specified capital asset by non-resident on recognized stock exchange in any international financial service center, that is not regarded as transfer. Then if government securities are transferred by a non-resident to another non-resident outside India through an approved intermediary, it is not regarded as transfer. Then remember this, redemption of sovereign gold bonds. Redemption of sovereign gold bonds by an individual is not regarded as transfer. Similarly, if you are transferring any work of art, archaeological collections, drawings, paintings, monuments, etc., to government or notified universities, National Museum, National Archives, etc., it is not regarded as transfer. Conversion of bonds or debentures into shares or debentures is not regarded as transfer. Conversion of foreign currency exchangeable bonds. Conversion of foreign currency exchangeable bonds into shares or debentures is not regarded as transfer. Conversion of preference shares into equity shares. It's a very long list that is not regarded as transfer. Similarly, if there is a transfer of a capital asset or intangible asset by on succession of firm by a company, fulfilling what are the conditions laid in section 4713. Here the conditions of section 4713 is there. The same has been say is required to be fulfilled. Now what fundamentally the condition of section 4713 is what? All the assets and the liabilities of the firm immediately before conversion becomes the assets and liabilities of the company. All the partners becomes the shareholder in the same proportion in which their capital account stood in the books of the firm. So if A, B, C were partners and having the ratio of capital of 5 lakh, 4 lakh and 3 lakh, they will be given shares in this ratio only. And the partners do not receive any consideration except by way of, say, allotment of shares, and their aggregate shareholding must not be less than 50%. And the same must continue for a period of, say, 5 years from the date of such succession. And if any due mutualization or corporatization is there, then it must be in accordance with the scheme of SEBI. So fundamentally, this has been provided under 4713. This is important, very, very important. You can go through the same. Then, in case if membership right, if you are a member of a stock exchange, immediately before corporatization, we get what? Trading and clearing rights. We get trading and clearing rights. And we get shares of stock exchange limited company which has been formed. So here the cost of membership card, cost of acquisition of membership card will become the cost section of the shares, and cost of trading and clearing rights will be taken as nil, and this transaction of giving trading and clearing rights and shares by on surrender of this membership card, basically that right on exchange of the membership card, that will not be regarded as transfer. So transfer of membership right of a recognized stock exchange in a scheme for demutualization or corporatization which has been approved by SEBI, the same is not regarded as what? Transfer. In transfer of a capital asset or intangible asset by a private limited company or unlisted company into LLP, when conversion of, this is also very important, private limited company into limited liability partnership, that transaction is not regarded as transfer. This has been provided in section 47(13)(b). So this section is important. Now they say that the said transaction will not be regarded as transfer when all the assets and liabilities of the company, immediately before the conversion becomes the assets and liabilities of the limited liability partnership. The shareholders which were there immediately before the conversion becomes the partner in the same profit sharing ratio in which as their shareholding was there at the time of conversion or the date of the conversion. They do not receive any consideration in any form except by way of share of profit and capital contribution in LLP, and their aggregate profit sharing ratio must not be less than 50%, and it must continue as such for a period of 5 years, not less than 50% from the date of conversion. For a period of 5 years it must continue. Besides this, the total sales, turnover or gross receipts in the business of the company in any of the 3 years preceding the previous year in which conversion takes place, it does not exceed rupees 60 lakhs, and whatever is the value of the assets appearing in the books of accounts of the company in any 3 previous years preceding the previous year in which the conversion takes place, it must not exceed 5 crores, and no amount is paid directly or indirectly to any partner out of the balance of accumulated profits for a period of what? 3 years from the date of conversion. So when these conditions are satisfied, then the said transaction is not regarded as transfer. Then if you are transferring any securities under securities lending scheme of SEBI, it is not regarded as transfer. Besides this, under 47(14) also, if there is a transfer of capital asset or intangible asset by sole proprietary concern into company, the conversion of sole proprietary concern into company, the said transaction is not regarded as transfer. Transfer of capital asset under reverse mortgage is not regarded as transfer. Then transfer of shares of a special purpose vehicle to business trust is not regarded as transfer. Transfer of units by a unit holder under consolidating scheme of mutual fund, similarly consolidating plant of mutual fund scheme, these transactions are what? Not regarded as transfer. So these are the transactions which are not regarded as transfer, and in normal circumstances when the transactions are not regarded as transfer, then what happens is the cost of acquisition of the previous owner becomes cost action of the asset to the assessee. Now as we see, we are having capital gains. How you will be computing the capital gains, that has been provided in section 48. Section 48 deals with what? Mode of computation of capital gains. Capital gains, in case if short-term capital asset has been transferred, the resultant sum will be short-term capital gain. If long-term capital asset has been transferred, the resultant sum will be what? Long-term capital gains. Long-term capital asset has been transferred, resultant sum will be long-term capital gain. How you will be computing the short-term capital gains? Section 48 provides for the same. First of all, you will be calculating the full value of consideration. What is the sale consideration for transferring that asset? Expenses in connection with transfer is reduced to find out the net consideration, from which cost action and cost of improvement will be reduced to work out the short-term capital gains. Then we give the exemptions under section 54, 54B, 54D, G and GA, and the resultant sum is what? Taxable short-term or say long-term, taxable short-term capital gains. While computing long-term capital gains, we get the benefit of indexation. How you index? You get the benefit of indexation of cost action. Whatever the cost of action divided by cost inflation index in the year in which the asset has been acquired into cost inflation index of year of transfer. This way indexation is done. Similarly, index cost of improvement has been worked out. The improvement expenses which have been incurred on or after 1/4/2001, because our base year now starts from 2001, we get the index cost action, index cost of improvement, then the resultant sum is what? After giving the exemptions of section 54, we get taxable long-term capital gains. Now, how you will be computing the index cost section? There is cost of acquisition into cost inflation index of the year of transfer divided by cost inflation index of for the first year in which the asset is held by the assessee, or for the year beginning on 1/4/2001, which is later, because fundamentally the index starts from what? 1/4/2001. And we haven't been given option to take fair market value as on 1/4/2001 or the actual cost. If the asset has been acquired prior to 1/4/2001, or the actual cost, which is higher as cost of acquisition. Okay. Now say for example, if we have acquired gold on 10/2/1999 for 2 lakh rupees, and its fair market value on 1/4/2001 is 2,50,000 rupees. So we will take what? 2,50,000 rupees as the cost section, cost inflation index of 2001 to these are the indexes. For the base year it is what? 100. So that will be 100 into what? The current year index. Current year index rate is 301. So likewise you will be required to compute the index cost of action. Similarly, if whatever improvement expenses have been incurred by the assessee on or after 1/4/2001, because we are taking the fair market value, therefore we are not considering any improvement expenses before 1/4/2001. So here, on or after 1/4/2001, whatever improvement expenditure has been incurred divided by cost inflation index of the year of improvement into cost inflation index of the year of transfer. So divide by cost inflation index of the year of improvement. Now here, while computing capital gains, securities transaction tax is not allowable as deduction. In case of capital asset, land or building, in the fair market value as on 1/4/2001, we are taking a fair market value as cost. So here the fair market value as on 1/4/2001 cannot exceed what? Stamp duty value. So if actually as DV as on 1/4/2001 is say 2,50,000 rupees, and we say our fair market value is 4 lakh rupees as on 1/4/2001. Bola, no, it won't be considered. You will have to take the stamp duty value on 1/4/2001. Then indexation benefit is not available in respect of debentures and bonds. Indexation benefit is not available in respect of debentures and bonds other than capital index bonds issued by the government and sovereign gold bonds. So in this case, we get the benefit of indexation. Otherwise, you won't be getting the benefit of indexation. Then in case of an assessee, being a non-resident, any gains arises on account of say appreciation of rupee between the date of purchase and the date of redemption of the rupee denominated bonds. So there is an appreciation of rupee, then the same will be what? Ignored. That won't be considered here if there is any appreciation on in terms of rupee between the date of purchase and date of redemption of rupee denominated bonds of an Indian company against investments which have been made in foreign currency. So here the appreciation aspect will not be considered while computing the full value of consideration. Now these are the basis, these are the cost inflation indexes. They are given in the question, but remember the current year's index is what? 301, that is 2021 financial year index is 301. Now how you will be computing capital gains? Special provisions are there in case of non-residents. They are acquiring say shares or debentures of an Indian company. They are acquiring shares or debentures of Indian company. This is first proviso to section 48. When they are acquiring shares or debentures of an Indian company in convertible foreign exchange. Here the full value of consideration, the same is converted into the foreign currency by applying say average exchange rate as on the date of transfer. That is buying rate, TT buying rate plus selling rate. So shares and debentures basically they are acquired in foreign currency, say by sending foreign currency into India. So whatever is the full value of consideration in Indian rupees, the same is converted into the foreign currency, say US dollar. by applying what? Average of TT buying rate and selling rate on the date of acquisition. So if the same has been sold for say 25 lakh rupees and average of TT buying rate and selling rate was 75, so that will be converted here. Then expenses on transfer will say 50,000 was the expenses on transfer, that will also be converted into foreign currency by applying average of TT buying rate and selling rate on the date of transfer. Then cost of acquisition will be converted. We have acquired this shares for say 15 lakh rupees, and at that time the average of TT buying rate and selling rate on the date of acquisition was 60 rupees, buying rate and selling rate average. Then capital gains will be computed in the foreign currency. Capital gains will be computed in foreign currency. It will be reconverted into Indian currency by applying average, by applying buying rate, not average, by applying what? Buying rate on date of transfer. By applying buying rate on date of transfer, no benefit of indexation will be available. However, when we see that when unlisted shares are transferred, by non-resident while computing income tax under section 112, neither first proviso to 48 applies, neither this applies, nor what? Second proviso to section 48 indexation that do not apply, and applicable tax rate there is what? 10%. So this is applicable in respect of transfer of shares or debentures. It is only applicable on transfer of shares and debentures which are acquired by a non-resident sending convertible foreign exchange in India. And this way, for every say reinvestment, will the provisions of this first proviso to section 48 will apply. So this is about what we have discussed, general aspects. So fundamentally what we have discussed is there must be a capital asset must be transferred, then the resultant sum will be capital gains. Capital asset can be a short-term capital asset or a long-term capital asset depending upon the period of holding, and we compute what? The capital gains accordingly. Now in our next lecture we will be discussing capital gains in special cases.